We're going to keep the program moving right along so that we can be timely and get you guys out of here on time. And so I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our luncheon speaker for today, Ridney Castine. Ridney is a nationally known tobacco control activist. From his adolescence to his adulthood, he has traveled across the country, energizing, empowering, and advocating for youth of all backgrounds. Currently, as Truth Initiative's Managing Director of Community and Youth Engagement, he supports the development, implementation, and management of a new legacy initiative directed to advancing comprehensive tobacco and smoke-free campuses at historically Black colleges and universities, and administers and manages all Truth Initiative's youth and/or young adult activism programs in support of the overall mission and strategic plan. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Ridney Castine.
Hello, how's it going? All I hear is choo, 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 clink, clink, clink. How's it going? All right. I understand that I'm what stands in between you and finishing your delicious meal, and it smells. I walked outside. All you have to do is walk outside and walk back inside, and you are overwhelmed with the smell of good food. And so I can't wait until I finish talking so that I can go and eat my plate. It's sitting right there in my chair. Because you know, this is one of the advantages of coming to somewhere like Pine Bluff. I live and work in Washington, D.C., and it's a lovely city, right? It's nice, but they can't cook up there, y'all know. They don't know how to cook. And I'm a Louisiana boy, so, you know, we know how to do what we can do. I want to walk through a little bit of information about our community and youth engagement efforts at the Truth Initiative, and I also want to sort of take you through that, not just by talking, but also showing you a few different videos of some of our efforts and how we've impacted the community. I want to sort of lay out some definitions about that so that we can be all on the same page, and share some success stories that we've been seeing from the field, and then I'll be out of your way. Soon enough, right after, and probably the next 2 minutes, I will go into just a little bit of an icebreaker activity to make sure that everybody can kind of stay awake. I know that the tea is very sweet, but I don't want you to come down off your sugar high, not at least while I'm up here. And so we'll do an icebreaker so that we are all on the same page. But first, let me just talk about why I got involved with this, because I think it's really important to do so. You know, I've been involved with tobacco control now for 20 years. I knew I was going to get everybody's eyes up here. Yeah. I started this work when I was 10 years old. As a youth advocate, I'm 30. I started this work when I was 10 years old as a youth advocate in my town of Napoleonville, Louisiana. And Napoleonville is a small town in southeastern Louisiana. It is population 610, and 580 of them are my cousins. The remainder are my parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. One of the things that's really important and really big as somebody who's from the country, as we can say, is family. Family is something that stands out for us. When you don't have anything else, you have family. And even when they're not acting right, you still have them. Whether you want them or not, they're still there. And that was big for us. In my family in particular, we had an uncle who everybody looked up to. My mom, dad, he was, I guess, technically a great uncle. He was my grandfather's brother. Somebody who was big and strong and independent, who had served as a Marine, who was his own business person, and was really just wise beyond his years. And playful spirit and gentle soul, and when he spoke, you listened. And this uncle was our favorite. This was my favorite uncle out of everybody I knew. But there was an issue here. I watched, as a 9 and 10-year-old kid, my uncle go from a big, strong individual to somebody who was scrawny and needed help with simple tasks like washing his own face or eating his own food. And that perplexed me even at a young age to figure out what was it that was, taking my uncle away from me. What was it that was literally killing my uncle? And I learned that it was because of his lifelong addiction to smoking Camel cigarettes with no filter, 2 packs a day, that ultimately lung cancer was the cause of his demise. From that point, I joined the Boys and Girls Club in my hometown, and from there I was involved with a program called Teens Against Tobacco Use. Started working with the Tattoo Teens Against Tobacco Use program in educating my peers throughout the Assumption Parish, or the region where I was from, the neighboring sort of cities. And then from there, I had the privilege of being involved in policy change efforts, making policies change both at the local level and in neighboring communities, but also participating in some of the things that Tanya mentioned earlier today. I remember in the year 2007, when I was a high school student, standing on the steps of the Louisiana State Capitol, flanked by the Lieutenant Governor and some senators and other prominent members of the Louisiana House of Representatives and the Senate, standing there saying, "Oh, y'all eating, I can't say this." Well, I'll come back to that. Shucks. I have to tell you the story at the state capitol. Somebody's going to have to remind me of that before I leave. But in any case, I remember what I said then, and I've been involved with efforts changing policy in Louisiana, being flown in to help folks change policies in their states, and working with folks to change legislation and change policy at the federal level. I remember in 2005, I was a part of a group of young people who were flown to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of the United States Congress to talk about the need to give the Food and Drug Administration the authority to regulate tobacco products. And so prior to 2009, there were, strawberry and wine and candy-flavored cigarettes, right? And so this law sort of gave the FDA the authority to regulate that, and out of those regulations came the banning of all flavors with the exception of menthol. And so since I was the only African-American young person in that group, I met with this person. He was the only African-American United States Senator at that time. And as I was sitting across the room from this gentleman, going through talking about the need and the importance of the FDA to regulate tobacco products. We had breakfast together, this gentleman and I, and I gave him my whole elevator speech. And he just sat there and he was like, "Okay, yeah, thank you for your time, young man. I appreciate you coming through." He wasn't trying to hear and understand what I was saying at all. But, how incredible was it to sort of fast forward and see that once Senator Barack Obama became President Barack Obama, he was the person who signed that idea into law. And so that's great to have been able to be a part of that. All right, so each of you have before you a white piece of paper. I want to just do a quick little activity. I just made this up, and so I hope that it works well. I went into the computer lab and I took paper out of the printers. And so if you have some left, you give them to me and I'm going to put them back in these people's printers because I want to come back. You understand? It's not where you go, it's where you can go back. All right. All right, so here's what I want you to do. It's not really profound at all, but this is a white piece of paper, so go on and hold it and flip it and look at it, make sure it doesn't have any tricks. I'm going to give you a set of instructions. I'm going to only give them to you one time, and whether you follow them the right way or not, that's on you. But I'm going to give them to you once and one time only, and we're going to start right now. Okay, everybody, take your paper, hold it up in front of you, and now fold it in half and tear it. Once again, fold it in half and tear it again. One more time, fold it in half and tear it again. And for the last time, fold it in half, if you can, and tear it again. Those were some simple instructions. I believe that you may have been able to achieve those. And so on the count of three, why y'all still tearing? I've been stopped. On the count of three, I want everybody to lift up their papers and hold them up. Be proud of it. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait a minute. What's the problem here? Something is wrong. Something is wrong here. Oh, what? I said what? I said tear it in half. Well, why y'all rip it then? So, look at your table. Does anybody's paper look just like yours at your table? It kind of. Tanya, hold yours up. Tanya got 3 strips. You understand me? I don't know. I said, this is what I said. Now, wait a minute now. I flew all the way from Washington, D.C. to Little Rock, Bill and Hillary Clinton Airport, and drove down the road to Pine Bluff. And all I had was some simple instructions, and you mean to tell me that 70 people didn't hear anything that I just said? You heard me? You heard? Thank you. Okay, all right, now, wait a minute. All right, okay, so here's what I said, and I'm gonna rewind and repeat. I said, take your paper, hold it in front of your head, fold it in half, tear, fold it in half, fold it in half, and if you can, one more time, fold it in half. And the end result, if you followed what I said to do, just like I said to do, it would have been this, right? Or not? So let me ask you this. Hold it, that's a good point. She said, I didn't tear mine. So, listen to me now, stay with me. I said fold it in half. Is this a fold or what? So all across Arkansas, this is a fold. All right, and so now, I said tear. All right, I said tear, and so I did this. This was tear to me. Where I'm from, this is tear. Huh? So is this still, this is tear 2? And this is tear 3. That's tearing it. This is ripping it where I come from. Here's why I went through that activity. And y'all, this activity is really, really cheap. All you have to do is go to the nearest printer and steal some paper and go into the room. And you can cause chaos in whatever room you enter in. Here's what's important. The work that you do, one of the reasons why this conference is so important is to bring everybody in to ensure that we all have the same directions, to ensure that we have the same level of understanding, and that when we go to the communities that we are here to serve, that we're all doing things the same way. And so when we talk about going in and engaging a community, we all need to be doing it at the same level, to share the same intensity. Because when we're not all on the same page, y'all like how I spun there, huh? When we're not all on the same page, we get different results. And so what I want, y'all better clap, that was good now. No way. I'm not gonna sell myself short, no way. I'll tell you, this is cheap. This cost me nothing. What I want to do is I want to talk about community and youth engagement. I'm so excited to now be the Managing Director of Community and Youth Engagement at Truth Initiative, which was formerly called the American Legacy Foundation, or Legacy, based in Washington, D.C., founded as a result of the 1999 Master Settlement Agreement between 46 states and the 3 at the time major tobacco companies. And so I'm excited to sort of lead our efforts in dealing with youth and community engagement, and I'm even more excited to be here with each of you. Now, I'm going to try and attempt to make sure that I get this thing right. So here we go. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about as far as our community and youth engagement program is our youth activism programs. And our youth activism programs have a youth activism fellowship, a national summit on youth activism, some high school outreach that we do, as well as some of the technical assistance programs that we offer as states. So here's what we know. Our approach to community and youth engagement is one that says, in order to meet our broad goals of achieving the very first tobacco-free generation, we must empower individuals, coalitions like you, and organizations to take action in their local communities. We like to go out and inspire and organize and motivate others to sort of organize under the banner of creating the very first tobacco-free generation. And so we do that by helping them to counter big tobacco's influence, especially within communities of color and lower income populations. The truth is, if we want to get to a point where smoking indeed is a thing of the past, we've got to get the smoking rate much lower in communities of color. And so while there's been significant progress made in the year 2000, when I was in middle school, in the year 2000, the teen smoking, I'm not just throwing that out, I ain't trying to be ageist, I'm just saying, I just knew that. The teen smoking rate in the year 2000 was 23%. This year, it's down to 8%. Progress has been made. There's no doubt about that. But as Tanya and Del Monte alluded to earlier today, and which is 100% true, there's a lot of work to be done. The 7 and 8% don't look as good when you realize that 23% of African American young adult boys, 18 to 24, are smoking little cigars and cigarillos. That doesn't look as good anymore once you sort of dig down into those numbers. Same thing with Hispanic and Latino use, extraordinarily high use of little cigars and cigarillos. And then e-cigarettes are another sort of phenomenon that we really need to think about an appropriate strategy for curbing the use of e-cigarettes, particularly with youth and young adults. And so the very first thing I want to talk about is the Youth Activism Fellowship Program. And it is a 12-month intensive leadership development opportunity for 18 to 24-year-olds. And so if you know somebody, if you have folks in your program or in your communities who would be good candidates for this, or people here within the college at UAPB, it would be good for you to sort of sign up for this. You do not need to have prior experience in tobacco control or anything like that. This is just a good opportunity to sort of be a part of a national fellowship program and learn about principles of activism and advocacy. I'm proud to say that when I got to Truth Initiative, their fellowship program had 4 members, and this year we have 30, and that represents a 752% increase, but nobody's counting except for me. And I'm proud to say that we have an incredibly diverse fellowship program. I try not to let it, within my control, to never have a program like I was in when I was invited to Washington to speak to Senator Obama. I don't want anybody to be the only anything in a program that I have the opportunity to influence. And so you're not going to be the only, LGBT member, not going to be the only black person, not going to be the only person of Asian descent. We're going to mix it up so that you can see and so that participants can have a rich and diverse experience. I'll just put a plug here and say that you should be on the lookout because applications for the fellowship program will be released next week on our website, the Truth Initiative's website. I don't know why somebody's calling me from the office, but on the Truth Initiative's website, truthinitiative.org. So stay tuned and please look for that. And if your people will say that, they got the information because you heard me talking in Pine Bluff, that'll be very helpful for them to do that. That's a hint. So why activism? Why young adults and tobacco? Well, we know, y'all know this already, that tobacco, even today, even in spite of the incredibly low number smoking rate with respect to teens, tobacco remains the leading cause of death and disease in the United States of America, taking away over 480,000 Americans each year. That's every 72 seconds. Someone in the United States dies because of a tobacco-related illness. That's every 6 seconds. Somebody in the world dies because of a tobacco-related illness. And so while we can sit around and celebrate and pat ourselves on the back, there's a lot of work that we need to be doing to make sure that these numbers sort of turn around and go into our favor. And so we know that young people, because they are specifically targeted by the tobacco industry, they can turn that thing around and be the best of the best advocates in making community change. And so again, the quote that Tanya mentioned earlier, the R.J. Reynolds quote, when asked what product do you smoke, he responded and said, "We don't smoke this shit, we just sell it. We reserve that right for the young, the poor, the black, and the stupid." And so what that meant was this is not a product for a man of my distinction. This is for somebody who's young. If you're not young, you must be poor. If you're not young or poor, you must be black. And if not, you got to be plain old stupid. And so they know. And then when you look at some of the other documents, one of the Laura Lord Tobacco said in their documents that the basis of our business is the high school student. They know they've gone out of their way to target young people with their advertising and with their marketing efforts to ensure that, just like my uncle, they can become lifelong addicts and ultimately succumb to whatever ailment that they face. And so I won't go through all of the slides here. I have 70 of them, so I probably won't go through all of them, right? There are a few things that I think is particularly important that I'll share with you. And so some of the program components with the fellowship program are bringing them together 3 times a year to do some intensive training, but to also require them to be a part of or to lead in their local communities a local project, a project that has local impact implications. And so some have been taking the mantle of going and making their parks and recreation centers tobacco-free, or their colleges and universities. Some have been more research-heavy in doing things that research menthol usage among distinct communities. We sort of let them do whatever they're going to do, and we provide them with some strategic guidance on how to get through that. I want to stop now, and I hope I can be successful in doing this. I want to stop now and share with you a video that a member of our fellowship program did as part of his local project. Just as a bit of context, a member of our fellowship program, Lincoln Mundy, did a project called Black Lives, Black Lungs. And so that looked at the historical relationship between the African American community and the tobacco industry, which is an interesting, and Tanya alluded to it when she talked about campaign contributions. But there is a rich and distinct history between the African American community and the tobacco community. Just to put it out there, when nobody was giving black folks money, the tobacco company and the alcohol company was. And so when you look at major movements in the 60s and 70s, a lot of those conferences, including from those things done by the NAACP and by black churches, were funded in part by contributions from the alcohol companies and the tobacco companies. Some of the very first black executives were in the tobacco industry field. So this highlights that.
Among all racial and ethnic groups in the United States, the Black community has carried the greatest burden from tobacco-related diseases. Black Lives, Black Lungs explores how that came to be. The Truth Initiative Tobacco Industry Documents is an archive of over 14 million internal documents made public through litigation and by whistleblowers. The following quotes give insight on the strategic and predatory targeting of the Black community at the hands of the tobacco industry.
Mobile van program established to provide Newport with impactful and cost-efficient sampling of product targeted to reach menthol smokers in a non-traditional manner at home in inner city and ethnic communities.
Growing up, we used to joke around that black people love menthols.
Now saying that there was a targeted effort to introduce this form of tobacco into our communities, it's kind of saddening.
Primary target audience, Black inner city youth and adults, 18 plus. Lower income, poorly educated. I wasn't very surprised because I know that it's important to target people who don't have a lot of money for something that is addictive. My dad has smoked throughout my entire life. It makes me feel really sad and disappointed that this is on purpose. Like, people are making money off of this, and it's an addiction and it's wrong and it's costing our family like hospital bills.
I'm talking about people as commodities and as a profit, as opposed to people who have lives and families and whole histories behind them, is unethical and immoral, and it is unacceptable.
The cost of a pack of cigarettes seems so high, relatively speaking, that the ghetto smoker has to take a greater financial risk, not even considered in other areas, just to sample a new alternative brand.
When you read the word ghetto smokers, you laughed.
I laughed, but it's so funny that ghetto is synonymous for black when we are so diverse.
We should stress that marketing efforts to gain black smokers' attention will involve heavy investment in black media and possibly a single-minded approach against this target to the virtual exclusion of others. It just reinforces the idea that Black communities are here just to be exploited.
That kind of terrifies me, especially knowing that within my community there's a rampant need to almost attack the community by selling and targeting a specific deadly product to Blacks. That's horrific.
Negro smoke menthols to make their breath feel fresh, to mask this real or mythical odor. They're really trying to make Negroes seem separate from regular people. So when regular people want to freshen their breath, they brush their teeth or eat gum or eat mints. But to assume that Negroes smoke to do that is foolish.
The fastest method of building image in the inner city Black segment is exposure through involvement with the community.
Did y'all hear that? Is exposure through involvement with the community. And so what they've done, and I won't show you the whole video, it's about 5 minutes. 5 minutes in total length. But what I said earlier is that the tobacco companies have spent a lot of money making sure that they sort of invest in these communities and making sure that their presence is felt and known. And that is a strategy that started way back when. These documents are documents from the 60s and 70s. And so one person can say to me, well, Brittany, why would you go to somebody in 2016 using documents from the 70s? Well, because although the documents say the 70s, the behavior hasn't changed yet. And so it's still relevant to talk about what's going on in this thing. I hope that you can kind of feel the anger that I feel when you read about how the tobacco industry has sort of targeted the African American community and others to market their deadly products to them. The truth of the matter is they've done that. They said they were experimenting with a higher end cigarette at one time, higher end, whatever that means. And they said that because of a study that they did in the city of Detroit in the 70s and 80s, they knew that they needed to, that it was a need to come up with a high end cigarette because of the sheer number of Cadillacs in the driveways of African Americans in the city of Chicago. Come on. I mean, Cadillacs are nice. But that doesn't mean a person wants a high-end cigarette, right? And so, and the same thing, they've done it, within the confines of the Hispanic Latino community. They've done it within the confines of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. They had a project called Project Scum, and that was used to describe LGBT people, Project Scum. And SCUM stood for Subculture Urban Marketing. But that's how they felt about people who were lesbian, gay, bi, or transgender. And their smoking rate is extraordinarily high. I'm talking about upwards of 35 to 45% of gay folks smoke, LGBT folks smoke. And that's too high. And so that goes back to that 8% number, and it says, okay, well, 7%, that's not all that when you look at the work that we have to do in those different communities. All right, let me keep going. So I want to talk a little bit about our efforts with high school students. So our very first time in doing this was last year in July in Orlando, when we brought together 70 young people from 23 states, including Arkansas. Let me tell you how I remember there were folks from Arkansas, because they had I remember this like this was yesterday. They had a flight leaving Orlando with a layover in Dallas, coming to Little Rock, right? And they got stuck in Dallas. You remember? Yeah. And so that took some negotiating because they were under the age of 18. And so it's like, oh, what am I going to do with these people's children who are in Dallas but stuck because of the weather? But I said that to say we spread ourselves out to make sure that we reach out to all sorts of states. We had 23 states plus the District of Columbia represented at the National Summit. And so this year we're looking to do that again. Applications for the National Summit on Youth Activism are live right now. All you have to do is go to thetruth.com to look up those applications, which is different from the site that I gave you earlier, I know. But you can sort of go to either or to do some cross-posting. This is for 15 to 18-year-olds, people who are in high school, to bring them in for a week to give them some intensive training, but to also prepare them to be activists at the local level. And so in addition to bringing them into Florida, having them making sure that they have a good time, going out to downtown Disney, paying for all of their expenses, we then in turn provide some support to them at the local level. So if they need shirts, if they need gear, if they need this or that, they can sort of write a proposal to us, and we'll help them to do that so that they can ultimately do some work at the local level. And so ultimately we're trying to create this pool of activists that we can pull from so that folks can continue doing this work. We expect that because of their efforts, because of the 70, that thousands will be impacted, because we tend to send them out to participate in the various things that we do, sort of like this high school tour, which is something I want to share with you. So what this is our efforts at high schools. And so starting last fall, we literally engaged over 20,000 young people at high schools throughout the country. And we're wrapping up this year's tour this week in California, where we'll engage about 25,000 more. And so ultimately what you saw was our efforts at doing something different in engaging young folks. And so instead of me going to them and being in this setting in a suit and a shirt and all that kind of stuff, talking with a PowerPoint, we literally take a truck outfitted with a DJ and lots of gear and go to their high schools and meet them sort of where they are in an innovative and fun way, which is something that's a little bit, it's different from what I'm doing here today, and it's something that will ultimately stick with them. We engage with them via social media afterwards, and for those who decide to sign up through our text messaging services, they'll be able to sort of participate and engage with us via text message as well. Among the next things that I want to talk about are our college programs. And so at Truth Initiative, we have two college programs, a tobacco-free HBCU program and a tobacco-free community college program. And I'm excited to say that, even though we're at University of Arkansas Pine Bluff was ineligible because they already adopted a policy years ago. They were among some leaders in the country to do that without necessarily being prodded by folks at the national level. They did that because of folks on the ground like you guys who were willing to sort of invest time and support in helping to do that. We have two other grantees here in the state of Arkansas. Shorter College, which is a junior college by the AME Church in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and Arkansas Baptist College, because, the Baptists wouldn't let the AMEs outshine them, and so I'm AME, and so I just had to throw that out there. I didn't mean nothing by it now, y'all. Y'all put on the evaluation, don't bring him back here. And so, and it's great to do that, and we're working on engaging Philander Smith College, and they are our grant everything is going on right now, right? So our grant application for this term is $7,500, and I believe that someone in Philander Smith College is working on submitting their application sometime this week, which we're excited about bringing them on board. We are working with right now, without including Philander Smith and the others who are applying right now, but today we're working with 42 out of 105 HBCUs. And that means by the time that we finish this project, 85% of HBCUs will be covered by a comprehensive tobacco-free policy. So before we started doing this, the majority of HBCUs didn't have a policy, and we know that HBCUs serve a niche population. How am I on time? They serve a niche population some are first generation college, some are low SES, and many of the HBCU students, 99.9% of them, are students of color. And so our approach dealt with engaging the HBCU leaders as well as sort of building up the demand of students to sort of demand change at their campuses as well. We are, between our 2 college initiatives, we're working with nearly 100 colleges altogether and providing them mini-grant funding and technical assistance. So to 96 colleges in 29 states, Washington, D.C., and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I want you to know that I went myself to the Virgin Islands to just verify that they were doing the work. And I'm going back just to check on them. You understand what I'm saying? I'm going back to check on them. Somebody at work, I gotta tell y'all this, I'm sorry, but somebody at work said to me, well, I didn't say it to me, but they said to someone else who said it to me, why is Whitney going to the Virgin Islands? Now, nobody said anything when I was going to Talladega, Alabama. Nobody said anything when I was here in Little Rock and when I was in other places. Alabama has 12 HBCUs in all sorts of remote places. Nobody said anything about that. But when I went over to the U.S. Virgin Islands, when I went to St. Thomas to engage, that's what it said. It's in St. Thomas. And it's the only college on that campus, but it's an HBCU. Look it up now. I'm telling you. And so I went and because I was going all the way out there, I had to spend more than one day. But nobody said nothing when I went to Talladega, Alabama, though. Nobody. You want to talk at the water cooler about me? Get like my grandmother said, if you're gonna tell it all now. All right. And so what I want to do is I just want to sort of highlight and bring to life. This is probably going to be the last video I'll show with respect to our college initiatives. I want to show the work of Tennessee State University, and I want to highlight Tennessee State for a reason. Tennessee State is one of our larger HBCUs. It has about 13,000 enrollees on the campus, and our grants are small. $5,000 in one phase, $7,000 in another phase. Tennessee, a school of 13,000 doesn't need our money. Some may, but Tennessee doesn't. And because of the work that we've done with them, through a $5,000 grant, they were able to open the door to receive a $250,000 grant from a government entity. And so there's a saying, I don't know where it comes from, but if you're faithful over a little bit, you'll be, and there's a saying somewhere. I don't know where it came from, because I'm at work right now, so I don't know where it came from. All right, let me hit pause.
The Tobacco-Free Campus Initiative here at TSU is centered around us implementing a tobacco and smoke-free policy here.
I'm really excited, with where this initiative is going.
The Tennessee Board of Regents implemented a tobacco-free policy on paper in 2009. I looked at that policy and saw that it had no provision for e-cigarettes. What's more, I saw people smoking on campus.
Even my friends, they're smokers too. But I just want to bring awareness to them, that this could result in chronic issues.
Really, I've just been spreading the word to friends and stuff like that about, us being here and what we're trying to do. And I find the response to be really positive.
I'm excited about the student involvement because we're training future leaders.
One of the events that we put on campus to launch our campaign was during what we call Tabletop Wednesdays.
We actually had people sign a pledge ball, pledging to not smoke tobacco. Here, students really got a good vibe off of it, and they actually took the time to come up to the table.
The opportunity for HBCUs to teach their students, more than whatever it is they came to school to study, to teach them how to help improve the quality of life in their communities and their families. I think it's a great opportunity.
I feel like other HBCUs should support this initiative because, we're all in this together as a target of the tobacco industry.
Addressing the health disparities of African Americans is a critical component of their development as students and as African Americans and as citizens.
Well, I do want to thank the Truth Initiative for many resources that we still will be receiving over the course of this year.
My generation is moving away from tobacco, so we're not completely there yet, but I feel like the next generation will be all the way there.
Yeah, and we're excited about that work, not just because by the time we finish, all of these HBCUs will, be sort of tobacco free, but we're excited also because of the student engagement piece, which is a huge part of our efforts on the campuses. We want the students to lead this stuff, and so we'll give the grant to a department or to the dean of this or that, and that's great because somebody has to sign the paperwork. But ultimately, we're trying to build student leaders. And so I'm excited about this program. I'm excited about where it's been. And in doing some talks internally, I'm really excited about sort of where it's going to go in the coming years. Truth Initiative is committed to the work that we're doing with HBCUs. And I'm proud to be leading those efforts. Southern University was also ineligible. The Southern University system was ineligible because, years ago, a number of years ago, through part of the work that Communities of Color, which is the group that LPHI, the Tobacco Free Living Funds, had done that and sort of led the way for that change. And it was a major thing that sort of happened. So we're proud of that work that they've done. Ultimately, this is probably, because I'm not, about how long do y'all tell me, because I got the gift of gab. Does that include questions? Does that include questions? Or altogether? Okay, well, this is going to be my last slide right here. One thing I don't know how to do is whisper. I'm proud of this because ultimately we have through this program, we're reaching 700,000 students and 57,000 employees. So through the combined efforts of our community college initiative and our HBCU work, we're reaching all of these students and all of these employees, and we're ultimately making change happen on these campuses, which we know that college campuses, while everybody does not go to college, and they don't have to, but while college campuses still remain one of the most important places out there, especially when you look at the African American community. HBCUs have an activist bent about themselves, and so a lot of good things happen there. They teach you all kinds of life skills, and so we're proud to sort of be playing in that area. I want to say what I wanted to say earlier while you were eating. I remember when I was 16 years old. I can't wait to say this. I remember when I was 16 years old, standing on the steps of the state capitol, flanked by the lieutenant governor and other important people who are members of the Louisiana legislature. And it was at a time, I don't know if y'all remember this, there was a time that there was smoking sections in restaurants. Y'all remember that? Isn't that something? Who would have thought? There are places in Mississippi. I went to Mississippi 2 weeks ago, and I walked in, and the lady said, "Oh, do you want smoking or non-smoking?" I said, "Y'all still do that? Who does that?" But some places still do that. Far too many places. And so, I stood there and I said, as a 16-year-old kid, I said, "Mr. Governor, Mr. Speaker, a smoking section in a restaurant is like a peeing section in a swimming pool. And I don't want either one of them." And if you think about it, but don't think too long about it, but if you think about it, it's true. It is true. Yeah, and that thing went viral before viral was viral. That went all over the place. The last thing I want to share is a true story. And then we'll go into answering questions. I remember also in 2005 was a special year, it was an interesting year, and it was the year that Hurricane Katrina literally battered the entire Gulf Coast region. New Orleans was especially hit. And that year, you know about the Bayou Classic. I normally have to go and explain what that is, but the Bayou Classic is typically held, Thanksgiving weekend in New Orleans at the Superdome. Big family reunion, big rivalry game, a lot of good stuff happening. Workshops, beauty shows, pageants, battles of the band, all sorts of stuff. And it was interesting because that year, the Bayou Classic was moved from New Orleans to Reliance Stadium in Houston, Texas. And so, you know, not only is the Bayou Classic held Thanksgiving weekend, but it's also held around final exams. And I don't know why they do that. They still do it. It's always around finals. And so, you know, my friends and I said, well, we always go to the Classic. We're going this year. We're definitely going to go and show our support. And so I had the car. A group of us got together, hopped into my car, went to Texas. Great. Had a good time. Well, the plan was we were going to do everything we needed to do Friday and Saturday and come on back home Sunday because we had a final exam to take on Monday. Seemed solid, right? Well, we decided that we were going to just deviate from our original plan just slightly. And so we said, well, we're going to come home Monday instead. We're going to enjoy all Sunday in Houston. And since my friends convinced me that I was the smartest person in the group, I was in charge of coming up with a lie to tell to our professor. And so I did that. I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. And this is what I did. I woke up early Monday morning before we left, and I sent Professor Jackson an email, Professor Wanda Jackson, PhD, Masters of Public Health, Masters of Public Administration. She had an associate's degree and a bachelor's, all of that. You know, I sent Dr. Wanda Jackson. I said, Dr. Jackson, this is Brittany. Now listen to the other people who were with me. I said, we were on our way back from Houston, and we're unable to take the exam because our tire blew out. She said, no problem, Brittany. Just remember that my final exams are 100% essay. Keep in mind that we were trying to reschedule the exam because we were lazy and trifling, not because we were not good students. I was on the dean's list. And so, you know, we get there, the exam is rescheduled for Wednesday, we come into the room, she takes all of our cell phones. She was so strange, I thought. I said, this is a strange woman, she's strange. And so she took our cell phones and had us separated into different parts of the classroom and passed out our exams. As shortly as she declared it, the exams were 100% essay. The first question, I remember it like it was yesterday, was for 15 points. What is the name of this course? And I said, oh man, I got her. Quantitative techniques and political science. Political science was my major. Quantitative techniques and political science. Fascinating subject. I had an A in it, had one. And so, I had an A in it. And so I said to myself at that moment, I said, oh, she just wants us to have some sort of paperwork so she can give us this A. I mean, I figured, you know, sometimes people will give you, when somebody gives something to you, sometimes you just shut up and take it, all right? And so I flipped it onto the back side for 85 points. What tire was it? What tire was it, man? That thing got me. It still gets me to this day. What tire was it? Now, I didn't get to that part in the lie. And so we hadn't thought about what tire it should be. And so when I put one tire, my boy put another tire, my boy put another tire, it was quite obvious that we didn't have a blowout. You understand what I'm saying? And so I'm laughing today. I wasn't laughing then. You know it. And what was interesting about that is, and those of you who are familiar with HBCUs understand my pain. What happened was that this was a particular exam where if you failed the exam, you did what? You failed the class. Yeah. And to add a little bit more flavor, because there has to be more drama than that, to add a little bit more to it, this was a class that was not offered every semester. Y'all know y'all got them classes like that, don't? It wasn't just Southern. So I had to take the long way through school, you know what, the long way. I had to wait a while until that class was offered again. And it wasn't offered the next year. Well, it was offered the next year, but I was waitlisted. Y'all know what I'm talking. There were too many people registered who were supposed to be in the class that needed the class, and so they didn't want a repeat offender like me in there, so I had to wait again. She saw my name on that list. Just 30. Oh yeah, because you know, and also in HBCU life, sometimes you have that one teacher you got to go through to get out of there. Jackson was it. And so, needless to say, the moral of the story is don't lie. The second moral of the story is that, again, when we don't all share the same message, when we're not on the same page, we set ourselves up for failure. And what we do is a little bit, as hurt as I was by that, I still made it. As hurt as I was, not having the same message when we deal with communities has some life and death effects with it. The work that you do, the work that we do is so important because it literally educates and empowers people to make a difference exactly where they are. And so my plea to you is not to lie. Please don't lie. And please be sure to carry that message that while we've had a lot of progress with respect to tobacco, that we still have a lot of work to be done. Thank you so much.